how did you get into doing stand-up comedy? What's some, not necessarily, I mean, yeah, advice.
How did I get?
You can either speak
how
from
would one,
experience points or what you would do differently, but I know there's going to be people who are into or thinking about wanting to do stand-up
who might like
watch this video and like say, well, that's
yeah.
interesting.
When I've heard that question, or what I usually
Yeah, what's your spiel?
Well, there's my story and there's my spiel. My story is that when I moved to LA, I was 20 years old. This is like almost 25 years ago. I kind of didn't know what to do. I had some social anxiety. I went to the Groundlings. I took classes at the Groundlings.
That's
and that really helped.
improv.
Yeah, it's a comedy sketch improv theater, and that really kind of helped me come out of my shell, and it just helped in a lot of ways. I mean, I think that's the same thing. It's like I said, there's like a clown scene happening, and maybe at one point it was an improv scene, and I kind of like. I've always tried to be someone who dipped into all of it. You know what I mean? Though, like I said, things are more fragmented, and then there's all these political, it's like, the political stuff. It's like, well, if you're either on one side or another, I don't know. I just try to do my own thing. I started doing the Groundlings, and I was doing improv, and I liked doing the improv. And then I had some friends from the improv class who did do stand-up, and they're like, you should try stand-up, you should try stand-up. So I tried, and I remember it bombed real bad. And I thought, I'll never do that. And that was like 2002. And then I said, 8 months later, I was at a restaurant, and this waiter who like knew I was kind of a funny guy and knew I did like Groundlings classes, he said, I used to do stand-up. You want to, I'm putting a show together. You want to host it? And something in me said like, say yes. Right. Like I was scared. There's an example of being fearless. I was scared. But something was like, because I bombed so bad the first time, but I thought, I'm 23. Oh, God, I got the fear of life in me because I'm not going to college. I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
I'm not going back to Tulsa.
I don't want to go back to Tulsa yet. So I said, say yes. You have to say yes. You have to do it. You have to figure something out. And so when I did that, I kind of came up with a character. I wrote a whole bunch of jokes. They were all really stupid. Some of them were almost intentionally stupid. And
Andy Kaufman,
kind of, and I think that was probably
that was it kicking in.
And I did a character who told the jokes and thought they acted like every joke was killing. So the joke became more that I was like, wow, as opposed to the joke itself being good. And that started getting laughs.
That's a load off.
And it was like I was like, wow, I'm getting laughs because I'm acting. It's because of how I'm acting. And I like acting. So the acting, and it was like a character,
Yeah.
and some of the jokes I think were kind of funny, but like, funny and like, well, that's so weird.
Oh my gosh, that's corny.
That's so corny. That is corny. It's corny. That would be a positive way to sell corny. Corny. But, so that was sort of like, as soon as I got the laughs doing that, I said, I'm going to tell everyone I'm a comedian now. That's what, when you're 23 and people are like, what do you do? What are you?
You gotta have something.
I got to have something to say. So I was like, comedian. I'm a comedian. Not going to college because I'm a comedian. And then, and then UCB came to LA.
Upright Citizens Brigade.
Yeah.
Franklin? On Franklin?
Yeah. And so I was kind of in the first wave of that.
Fun.
Of the LA UCB. And, I didn't finish the Groundlings program because there was a lot of wait lists at the time. And then UCB came to town. But so there was two parts to that answer. So that was my story.
Experience, the advice.
Yeah. And then over time, and I could probably use some of this advice myself, because I think after the pandemic, during the pandemic and maybe even for a year or two, I kind of took time off from performing. I was like, well, I'm just going to try to focus on doing acting and stuff like that. And, but then I, through like Evan Hughes, who was very diligent about trying to get me to do more live stuff, I have started doing more live. Same with, and starting my own podcast and all that kind of stuff. I totally tuned podcasts out for years. I was like, I don't know.
The term podcast for me does.
Yeah, it sounds so new.
The term podcast doesn't have anything. It feels like I don't have anything to do with what I'm doing. I'm not.
I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
It's just a video interview. It's just an interview. It's just a sit down and talk. But yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
that's the word for it.
And there's like stand up, there are many ways you can interpret what that form is. There's many ways you can mess with the form. You know what I mean? So that's sort of what I've been trying to do with mine. But so advice about people who want to try it. What I would say is so when people say, "Oh, I couldn't do that," or "I'm interested in doing that," I always assume that means, what I hear that means is they're like, "How do I start an act? How do I do a show?" You know, well, you can look up where the local open mics are, or if, say, you're somewhere like Tulsa and you know someone like Evan Hughes, you might tell someone like Evan Hughes. You know, there's people like Evan out there who run shows. Some of them might be a little more gatekeepery. I find that Evan is very open and he's willing to give people a chance if they're trying stuff out. But so, you know, find someone who books a show, find a community, find people who have similar interests. If you're trying to figure out, well, how do I write the jokes? How do I put together a type 5? Come up with a couple of funny stories that happened in your life, something you got a unique perspective on, like, here's my opinion about this. You know, try to write a few one-liners, you know, if you can. I would say if you have an impression of a family member, do that. That doesn't hurt, you know? I mean, can you do an impression of your mom?
Yeah, everybody can do an impression of a family member.
Yeah, well,
and who's going to say they don't act like that?
Yeah, who's the family member you can do an impression of?
For each of them, but
Yeah,
you know,
an aunt, an uncle, or something like that, you know.
know.
And so you might say, I got an aunt or uncle who's
Yeah.
like this, you know. Just anything to fill the space for that first time. And then you try it, and maybe it goes great. And then if it goes great, then the next time you do it, it might not go great. Or you might have been operating off pure adrenaline of like, I'm going to keep the energy up, you know. And then you bomb.
And then you
And
bomb.
you're like,
That's a bomb.
and you're like, why did I bomb? You know, it was so funny the last time. And then you got to do it again and figure out, you know, don't give up on that material if you think it's funny.
Oh, really?
There's something there if you think it's funny, you know. Sometimes, I don't know, there's different processes. Some people sit and they write it all out and they say, this is going to be my script, and they memorize it and they recite it. Some people say, I'm going to talk about, you know, zebras. I got something to say about zebras. Okay, so zebras, these guys are, you know, and then they find it on stage, you know, because they know there's something funny, but they don't know what it is.
But that's enough cue to get you started, and then you just riff from there.
That's a kind of a lazy way to do it, and that's kind of how I usually do it. You know what I mean? That's if I have access to enough stage time, you know, to be like, I'm going to just get up on stage and just keep trying this out, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you've internalized a lot of this. You're just speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff that you've said 100 times. Or,
Yeah. So that's the key, I think, of starting doing stand-up. Think about some funny things you've said 100 times.
Oh, that's nice.
You know, some social jokes that you make, some funny observations, a story about a family member, you know, a story about something that happened to you. I hear a lot of people tell, like, one time I took a shit, and it's kind of like, we don't want to sit through this.
There's a lot of shit and diarrhea and vomit and jack off and
Everyone's got a story about that, and you know, if you got to fill it up with something, go for it. But it's weird. The diarrhea is not so funny either. But I don't know. The vomit, I don't mind. A vomit story, I could live with.
Well,
you know, but
any
I feel
real
like,
story can be funny. I mean,
yeah.
I mean,
but sometimes you know, people get up there and they're like, so one time I pooped, you know, and it's like, I don't know. I'm not trying to piss on poopers, okay?